Hello, everybody. I am Marianne Meed Ward, Mayor of the City of Burlington, and welcome to another edition of Burlington Matters, where we talk about issues on your mind, answer some questions, and assemble an always stellar panel of folks to talk about key things happening in the city. And today is no exception. I am delighted today to be joined by Jenna Puletto, who is our coordinator of community initiatives here at the City of Burlington, and Karyn Poad, who's the senior planner in policy and community at the City of Burlington. And we are going to talk about what is going on at our major transit station areas, affectionately known as MTSAs, or colloquially known as our GO stations, Aldershot, Appleby, and Burlington. And of course, we know we have to accommodate a significant amount of population growth here in the City of Burlington. We get assigned that by the province, and then at the region, we divide that amongst the 4 municipalities. And we know that the GO stations are a key to how we are going to make room for additional people in Burlington, since half our land is rural and we are not going to be expanding our urban boundary. We are going to keep our rural, and we are going to do our best to accommodate that growth within our urban boundary in the city limits. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to, let's start with you, Jenna, to talk to us about the very long journey that we've been on. It started in my last term of council when I was a councillor, and has extended and will extend actually even into the next term of council. So give us a status update on this journey we've been on and where we are at in the process. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Meed Ward. Yes, to your point, there has been quite a long journey on this process. The project actually started back in 2017 with what we called the Mobility Hub Study. We launched that project and we started off, which was a project at the time that actually focused not just on the 3 GO stations, but also on our downtown. We did a lot of work, and there was such a huge amount of public engagement around the vision for these 4 areas and what it was that people truly valued the most about each of these areas. And all of that work was captured in what we called the draft precinct plan, which was released in 2018. That was put out there for public consultation. And subsequently after that, the project was actually put on hold. In 2021, we actually resumed the project as what we call the MTSA Area Specific Planning Project. And it really just then sort of shifted focus to the 3 GO station areas, or major transit station areas in the city of Burlington. And really what it did was acknowledged all of that significant public engagement and work that went into the Mobility Hub study. And it brought that forward using the 2018 plans as the basis for all of that work. We brought it forward and created what we call the preliminary preferred precinct plans back in the fall of 2021. And we put those out there for community engagement, really building on the work that was done through the Mobility Hub study. We created what we call a new sort of community vision name for each of the MTSAs, or GO station areas. For example, in Burlington, we called it the Burlington Junction. Appleby was the Appleby Gateway, and Aldershot was Aldershot Corners. And really, try to bring some placemaking and start to establish a bit of the history of those areas that's so important, and help us to sort of carry those areas into the future. Using all of the engagement that we had in the fall and building on those plans, we brought forward in January to council for endorsement what we called the recommended preferred precinct plans. And again, just building on all of that feedback and the engagement that we had, building up into the sort of next iteration of the plans. And we brought those for endorsement. Council gave us a whole bunch of things that they wanted us to take a look at. And we've been working on making some amendments and changes to those, as well as building on the policy directions that were included to support the work back in January. And really from there, we've brought forward the final study report, and that's the MTSA Area Specific Planning Study Final Report from Dillon Consulting, and really just gives us an update on where we've come from January to now. It's another iteration of a precinct plan out there for further engagement, and presents a lot more clarity and detail around the proposed policy framework that we'll be working on as we move forward with the project. So things like high-level policy directions and policies on how we're actually going to achieve complete communities in and around the MTSA areas.
That's great. Yes, we know we want more than just tall buildings, and in some cases they might be smaller than tall buildings, because that's the whole idea behind precincts, which are different sections within a larger plan, where planning permissions are different than other areas within the plan, and that's a really important concept. So maybe Karyn, talk to us a little bit about that concept of precincts, and then we'll dive sort of individually into each of the areas, so people get a sense of what to expect, what's in the plan, and we'll do that next. But I wanted to give you a chance, Karyn, to talk to us about what comes next. When will this be finalized, and what additional opportunities there might be for public input into the latest version of the proposed plans?
Yeah, so as Jenna mentioned, we brought forward the final study that went to council and at the beginning of July, and now we're just working through more just establishing the policies, getting to the details of each precinct. So what you're gonna the policies that are going to guide how those areas and the precincts will start to come to fruition, and look at things like heights. How do we achieve these complete community elements? How do we make sure that and guide development to make sure that that some of those elements are that we're planning to get those elements in place to provide these mixed use communities that are near key transit infrastructure. We're looking for feedback on as we move forward and into the fall. I don't know, Jenna, if you want to jump in terms of more specifics on that, but really just to get into that detail, the detailed policies and how we establish these areas as complete communities moving forward.
Sure, go ahead, Jenna.
Yeah, I'll just say I'll make a little bit of a plug for engagement. We did put out that updated version of the plan, which is another opportunity to get engaged and to tell us what you think about it. I would encourage everybody to visit our webpage at getinvolvedburlington.ca/MTSA. As Karyn mentioned, we do have some work that's continuing, and as soon as that work gets finished, it gets published to our website. So it's the best opportunity to stay involved in terms of the additional work as we complete pieces of the project, as well as they arrive and as they get rolled out. There will be engagement opportunities that get posted up there as well. We are by no means near the end of this process, and we will continue to engage. It's sort of an open engagement window for the time being now. So I definitely encourage people to visit getinvolvedburlington.ca and learn about the different opportunities we will have coming up into the fall about engagement. And that's before we even hit our formal statutory process, which will be in 2023 at some point.
That's great. So so still lots of opportunity to have your input. And I do encourage people to go to the website that you mentioned, Jenna. There's lots and lots and lots of information. I love the maps in particular because I'm a very visual person. So show me the precincts and the maps, and where the parks are, where the mixed use is. And of course, I know people are very interested in heights and density in this area. So why don't we start with you, Karyn, and talk about, maybe we'll start with the Aldershot MTSA. Walk us through kind of at a high level, what has changed in the plan since the public might have seen it a couple of months ago, and a little bit about where height goes, where it doesn't go, and how that precinct is laid out. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll start and then maybe see if Jenna wants to jump in. But I think really one of the foundational pieces is really for the MTSAs to just direct the height closest to the station, and to we know that there's going to be growth, but really guide it toward the station, and then ensure that there's appropriate transitions to the neighboring kind of stable areas adjacent. So with the I guess the changes since the public would have last seen the Aldershot Go MTSA there, it's still really focused on that Aldershot, kind of the Aldershot vision and like along the main street there. The heights would be guided near the Aldershot Go Central precincts. There were some changes to, and I don't know, Jenna, if you want to jump in here, the Cook Commons. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the Cook Commons precinct and the changes that we made around those more specific areas.
Sure. I think from the version, I guess what I'll say is at a high level, both of the plans for Aldershot and for Burlington, there was a couple of elements that were sort of clarified or changed that appear differently. One of them being the public service facilities. We had previously identified them at specific locations, and this iteration of the plan doesn't include those. It's not that they've fallen off the radar. It's just that we've included them within sort of the policy context underlying to really enable them everywhere and to really signal that these are critical pieces, and we don't just plan for them in one or two key locations. They're important everywhere, and we've tried to raise sort of the profile of those by really, improving the policy framework, supporting them everywhere and encouraging them everywhere as a part of mixed use developments. So that's one of the big changes I would like to highlight as well. In the context of Aldershot, as Karyn mentioned, the commitment to the Aldershot Main Street, that Plains Road corridor is so significant, and there's so much history there through the Plains Road Village Vision, which started many, many years ago. And so we've tried to really, maintain that mid-rise Main Street vision of Plains Road, and that has only been furthered through this work. One of the big change, I guess, would be the Cook Commons, which is on the east side of Waterdown Road, and the Emery Commons, which is on the west side of Waterdown Road. Those are really pedestrian focused precincts. Both of those are supported by a linear park that are intended to sort of help to create a greened atmosphere as you move from Plains Road up into the Go Station areas. And so those are flanked, and we actually added the connection across Waterdown Road through the linear park. And in that, we've identified the sort of merging of the Emery Commons and the Cook Commons to meet at Plains Road. So you'll see a little bit of I guess it removed the Aldershot Main Street extending up Waterdown Road, and really created a unique vision for that area of Waterdown Road between just north of Plains Road and Masonry Court, giving it that pedestrian kind of identity and that really key connection across that piece of infrastructure on Waterdown Road.
Thanks for that. And I think a linear park is a new concept for a lot of folks. I think that the best comparison is probably in the downtown, our Elgin Promenade, which is a multi-use path and trail. It's a wide sidewalk, but it also has a teeter-totter, benches, a mister machine, which we love. I live around the corner, so we always make a point to go there on hot days, especially if we're walking our dog. And the water fountain that has the little doggy bowl at the bottom. Those are just some of the features that are in that. But it's a long, as opposed to kind of, we think of parks as square, big patches of grass with stuff in the center. This is along a strap of pathway that connects our Centennial Bikeway, actually, which goes all the way out to Brill Oak. So you can get from there all the way downtown on this amazing path with park stops along the way. So that's what we're planning in anywhere we can get it within these precincts, is that linear park path pedestrian concept, which is a whole new way of doing it. One of the other things that I wanted to highlight for folks who may be watching in terms of what's changed, and this is an area that certainly we've talked about and I raised at the meeting, was the south side of Plains getting potential for additional height from the original plan at 6 stories and now going up to 11. And I know there's a lot of residents in behind those lots, which aren't terribly deep, that want to keep it at that 6-story cap. I'm on that page with them, and making sure that we handle the transitions well. And as you said, so we've got some areas where there are 6 stories. The highest in that area is what, 30, 35? Remind me of what the new ones are there. Maybe that's a Karyn question. If you have the answer, or Jenna, I'm not sure which of you would have it at your fingertip.
Yeah, so the Go Central precincts across all 3 of the MTSA plans are intended to be sort of the highest heights and highest intensity and density of development. And in the context of the Aldershot Go MTSA, the maximum height that's proposed now is 30 stories.
Is 30, right? And we actually have some applications that are higher than that. So we'll be simultaneously looking at what we think is the right cap there, as well as having to process these applications. I want to come back to you, Karyn, and then we'll move to the other two precincts. But this notion of complete communities, and I know for folks out in Aldershot, having a smaller grocery store in the West End, so that not everybody has to drive east and face the traffic, to go to some of the larger grocery stores in the east part of Aldershot. That's something that's been requested a lot. But even just having appropriate services within these areas, because they're going to accommodate thousands of people, and we want jobs. So talk to us a little bit about what tools the city might have to can we force a grocery store to be there as a, for example? How do we get the jobs? How do we get the services that are there? So it's not just residential and people still have to, get in their car to go get day-to-day needs.
Right. So I think to answer that question, I think that we're gonna look to a policy framework that is going to encourage a mixed use. These mixed use communities provide the policy framework that would encourage those uses. We can't necessarily say there has to be a grocery store here, but we can provide the framework to enable those types of uses to for the opportunity or for them to come into the MTSA area. And that's more specifically more to those retail type uses, but we're also looking at, in terms of a complete community perspective, the other community facilities and other, parks and recreational needs and those types of services. That's also something to ensure that these areas function as complete, walkable mixed use communities, and ensure that there is a policy framework in place that would allow for those types of uses to be developed in these areas. So that is something that that we're considering as we move forward with the policy framework.
So is it fair to say we can force them to provide the space, but we can't tell them how to fill it? They have to build enough space for retail or commercial or office, but we can't tell them what needs to be in there.
To enable the opportunity for them to come there.
That's great. So let's move on to the Burlington Go Station, and I'll come back to you, Jenna, around what some of the key changes in that precinct are. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I think there's a couple of the ones that we sort of have talked about generally that apply to both. I guess in the context of the Burlington Go MTSA plan, one of the big changes was identifying heights at the Drury Node precinct, which had previously been excluded actually from the work that had been put out in January, with a maximum height of 39 stories. And really that's acknowledging the settlement that's occurred at the city on those pieces of land in that specific precinct, which is sort of just unique to that little parcel there. There was a piece that was removed out of the Drury Node precinct and brought over to the Burlington Go Central precinct that was previously identified in that Drury Node precinct, and that's the Leggett dealership property. And then what I would say from there is into the Burlington Go precinct, we've identified an increased height maximum of up to 45 stories in recognition of the area as the city's urban growth center, and identifying really that is the vision for the highest heights and densities, and really the height peak focused around the Go Station area and that incredible piece of infrastructure that's really driving some of the need to intensify around these areas. So those I think are the biggest changes, although I will say we did identify some additional height clarity through the Legion Node precinct, and that precinct was identified previously as a community hub. It still is, and we still really are focusing through our work going forward on how we can start to build in some of those really critical complete community elements, things like public service facilities, ensuring that we have the right mix of elements that need to be in there. And we've provided some additional height clarity Again, focusing a height peak at the intersection of Brant Street and Fairview Street of up to 30 stories in line with the Burlington Go Central Precinct, and recognizing its proximity to a frequent transit corridor along Fairview Street, and that that unique access to the GO station that's a little bit more removed for some of those other properties that are accessing Brant Street off of Graham's Lane and whatnot. Those I think are the biggest moves for the Burlington Go Central Precinct, or sorry, the Burlington Go MTSA.
Well, and this is another area where we're going to see those linear parks, public service facilities. Again, the notion that we can ask builders to leave space or build space, and then we fill it possibly with community centers or other amenities, or it's filled by the private sector. And I'm just thinking about some of the other work that is happening simultaneously with this discussion, which is, well, a couple of pieces. One, our affordable housing strategy. That's a big part of this. And how do we incentivize developers to build in these areas? We're looking at, for example, an inclusionary zoning tool. So I know that's a big question for folks. But the other piece that we just passed this past week is around ensuring that we're collecting enough per unit for Parkland per unit, and we jumped from about $5,500 per unit to 23 to 33,000, depending on whether it's high or medium density. The notion being that land in these areas is expensive, but we can't just build buildings, right? People that move into these areas as part of complete community need parks. So there's a lot of great work that's happening, as well as our parks and recreation master plan review to see what kind of facilities and services we might need citywide. I know pickleball is a big one that people want more of. I hear about ice time, people wanting additional ice pads, and so we'll get that information as well, which will really help to inform that complete community piece. In our last few minutes, I'll come back to you, Karyn. Let's talk about the Aldershot, the Appleby Go Station, which is really quite unique compared to the other two. So talk to us a little bit about that. And I don't recall a lot in the way of changes, but you will tell us if there were some. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll start, and maybe if Jenna wants to jump in, but I think really just pulling it up to the vision for Appleby, we know that it has a more of a unique context in that there is to the kind of a division to the north and the south, and the north being predominantly employment, and those employment uses will, given the policy framework at the regional level, and that those uses would still be maintained. And then there's more of the southern portion that would kind of evolve more as an urban village and have that balanced mix between employment and residential and commercial opportunities. So one of the concerns or work that is ongoing with Appleby is more of that from the land use compatibility piece, and that's something that we recognize as something that needs to be continue to be examined, and to look at how we ensure that we're creating that balance of introducing uses such as residential or more sensitive uses, given the adjacency to the employment uses to the north. So that's something we're still continuing to look at into the future with the Appleby Go, but and trying to figure out work through that balance. I don't know if Jenna, you wanted to add anything on Appleby as well.
Yeah, I think, one of the things we're trying to figure out is, what's the best way to sensitively introduce some new land uses into this area. It's really important that we protect all of those really critical employment uses that are there today. There are some pieces that are vacant, and we need to protect for their rights into the future as well. So it's really important that we work through this exercise to get some more clarity around, how far and where is the most appropriate place to start to build in some intensification into these areas. And we're starting to understand some of the pieces that we don't know yet, and we're working through what the path will look like in order to get us the information that we need in order to wrap up the plans for Appleby. So I think to that point, what's been presented as of July this past week, for Appleby right now, we've identified that the project is on hold, and we will continue to work through those land use compatibility discussions. And as soon as we have some additional information, we'll get it posted up to Get Involved Burlington, and keep, regular updates on that. And we'll be reporting back on Appleby as soon as we can.
Right, and just so folks can visualize this, it's really heavy industry north of the tracks, and then south of the tracks, we have more office uses, and then right across the street, but still part of the precinct, there are some townhouses and mixed-use developments there. So there is starting to emerge residential on that south side, but as you say, that compatibility to heavy industry and residential. We really need to have a good look about how close those uses can be to each other without being noxious to either party, because we don't want folks to be miserable in their homes, but we also don't want to lose that industrial use on the north side. Those are critical jobs for the city. So now in terms of density, there's I think it's 150 people or jobs per hectare at the Appleby, and then it's 200 at the other two. Is that roughly correct? In recognition of the unique features of each of those three.
So Appleby there was a alternative density target that was established through the regional official plan amendment, ROPA 48. So it's 120.
120, right. And then the other two are 200.
The Aldershot is 150. And then the
okay, so
Burlington
I'm striking
UGC.
out all over here. Burlington is 200. I know one of them is 200.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, lots more to learn about this online. Please visit getinvolvedburlington.ca/MTSA, which stands for Major Transit Station Area. Lot of great stuff happening. Long journey, and we know we want to make sure that what we build and allow to be built in these areas includes more than housing. We want affordable housing in there. We want jobs, we want services, we want community or public facilities to be in all of these areas, because we want people to be able to come, walk out their front door and be able to walk to what they need for day-to-day living and keep the congestion off the roads. So that's our goal. And thanks Jenna Puletto for being here, and Karyn Poad from the city's policy department. Thanks for your work, and thanks to you for tuning in. I'm signing off, Marianne Meed Ward, for another edition of Burlington Matters. Have a great day.